Welcome back to Sailing El Jaleo! When we left off last week, we were eagerly anticipating finally escaping North Carolina as we steamed our way towards Charleston, South Carolina. Let's go ahead and get right into it. Grab a drink, climb aboard, and let's get going. We got up early the next morning so we could make it to Charleston before sundown. The bridges in Charleston have a very specific schedule. They don't open during rush hour, and they only open at certain times of the day, and we got there right during rush hour. So rather than waiting until after dark to try and make it through Charleston Harbor, we decided to anchor for the night in Inlet Creek, just outside of Charleston. We didn't have a whole lot of choice, but anchoring in Inlet Creek was not a great choice, and I wouldn't do it again. Inlet Creek is very narrow but deep, and the anchor held good through the night, and we didn't swing from shore to shore. We just stayed right in the middle of the channel and moved with the tide. But because we stayed right in the middle, the center of the channel, every time the tide switched, the chain would drag along the hull. So you'd be sleeping, and you would hear the chain hit the hull and drag along the side, and when you're sleeping at 2 in the morning, you kind of crap your pants when that happens because you don't know what's going on, and your anchor alarm didn't go off, so just general confusion sets in. I'd never had that happen before where the chain actually hit the hull, and so I ran up top and looked. We were fine, everything was good, but it was a little bit of a heart-stopping moment there for a second, knowing that we had so little wiggle room along the shore. So I wouldn't anchor there again. The next day we did make it through the bridges, and then we made it through Charleston Bay. The weather was bad, so I didn't actually take any footage of that, and it was very sporty making it through that part of Charleston Bay. There were tanker ships coming in and out, container ships, naval vessels, and Coast Guard vessels. It was very, very lively, and it was windy and very wavy. Thankfully, I had the dogs down below. It did get a little rough, but they were fine. And the timing between the bridges, unfortunately, we missed the next bridge by about 10 minutes, so we had to hang out and wait for an hour so we could go through the next bridge. And we finally did make it through to the other side of Charleston, and we anchored in Stono River. At this point, Christmas was approaching, as was really bad cold weather. I can't remember what they called it, a bomb cyclone or a polar vortex or whatever it was, but everyone in the U.S. got slammed right around Christmas time, and we were not immune to that in South Carolina. And we got stuck in Stono River. I recorded a message on Christmas. It'll kind of go into it a little bit more. But this next clip you're going to see is some of that high wind and cold weather coming through. Thankfully, we could anchor close enough to the shore that we didn't have to deal with big waves. But it was really, really darn cold out. I think it definitely got below freezing. I think it got down in the high 20s, which for South Carolina, I would imagine is pretty chilly. And I was not used to that cold weather. Good morning, y'all. Today is December 25th. It is Christmas morning, and we are currently located in the Stono River, which is just outside of Charleston, South Carolina. And sorry about the noise. We've got the pups running around, and we've got the diesel heater going, and the wind generator is up here making some noise. So we've been here for about a week, and we didn't plan on staying here this long. I hurt my back, so I was out of commission for a couple of days, and we couldn't really move much. And after that, this polar vortex, or whatever they're calling it, came through. So it's been a pretty miserable and windy few days, but I think we're on the backside of it now. So hopefully we should be able to get moving again on Monday or Tuesday. The weather's looking a lot better coming up. Actually supposed to get back up in the 60s, upper 60s here, so that'll be nice. I think that's starting around Thursday, so we might get going Wednesday or Tuesday. But anyway, Merry Christmas. I hope y'all are well. And I think it's 17 degrees out here now, so it is pretty frigid. It's funny how quick you get used to the warm weather after living in Wisconsin and Colorado for so long. You'd think I would be used to it, but it is freezing out here. Brr. Thankfully the wind has subsided. We did have 2 days of 25-mile-an-hour winds along with the freezing temps, and that was pretty brutal, but it's starting to let up. So I hope you all are well. Merry Christmas. I hope you all are having a wonderful Christmas morning. We're gonna go downstairs and get warmed up and have some treats and see what we can find to open for presents for the puppy dogs, and just chill, maybe watch a little football later. So hope you all are warm and well, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye. We pick up the action a couple of days later after we finally managed to escape Stono River. We had anchored for the night in Dawo River, and we were entering the part of the Intracoastal Waterway where it in the southern part of South Carolina and the northern part of Georgia, it's just a lot of little streams and creeks, and there are large streams in there as well, and some sounds. But a lot of it is very small, very narrow waterways, and you have to be really careful, especially in the man-made portions. So there are man-made portions, they're called cuts, and they're basically just canals that connect the different natural waterways together. Now these canals, they do have a tendency to shoal over or to fill with sand, especially at the entrance and the exits of those cuts or those canals. And that's because they're not natural, so they become a really convenient dumping spot for the natural rivers to dump the sediment that they would normally carry. The first cut that we had to contend with in this portion of the Intracoastal Waterway was Watts Cut, and we're going through that right now. We hit it first thing in the morning, and we were going through at low tide. In this part of the ICW, the tides are typically between 6 and 7 feet, so the currents are very strong, and there is quite a difference between high and low tide. Watts Cut was just barely deep enough for us to make it through at low tide. We had about 7 feet of water under us, and we do need at least 6.5 in order to make it through so we don't rub bottom. There were several cuts coming up later in the day where we would have to try and time it so we got there close to high tide. There's no way we could have made it through those cuts at low tide, so we had to be pretty careful on when we arrived. And here we are arriving at the first of 2 consecutive cuts, and they are collectively known as the Ashapoo-Coosaw Cutoff. And the first one is not too tricky. We got there pretty close to high tide. The second one is extremely narrow and extremely shallow. That one you have to be really careful going through. And it was very tempting because there were lots of dolphins in this area, so I was trying to film dolphins and I was trying to steer the boat. And it quickly got very convoluted. The dogs were going nuts. They had just discovered dolphins not too long ago, so they were hunting dolphins, and it could have gotten off the rails pretty quickly, but I quickly gave up on filming, and I went back to just concentrating on getting us through these 2 cuts. The first cut was not bad. I stayed in the center. It was plenty deep. The second cut was actually very shallow. We went through at high tide. I think we were up 6 feet from low tide, and I saw depths as low as 9.5 feet. So at low tide, that's only 3.5 feet deep, and there's absolutely no way we could have gotten through there then. So it's a good thing we got there when we did, so we didn't have to anchor and wait for high tide. And if you keep your eyes peeled, you can actually see 2 buoys coming up here in a little bit, and that actually shows you how narrow the channel through this cut really was. The buoys were so close together, marking the port and starboard side of the channel, that I could just barely fit through them. It was like threading a needle going through this cut. As we neared Beaufort, South Carolina, the tides turned against us, and we anchored for the evening just off the ICW. And in this area was more extensive wetlands as we had seen in most of North Carolina and South Carolina up until this point. And I'm always impressed by the commitment that people have to get out to the water. I've seen docks up to 3/4 of a mile long just to get over the grasslands so they can get out and have a boat. That's impressive commitment. And that does it for this week. I would love to give a massive shout out to our Patreon crew. Without your guys' support, I definitely wouldn't make these videos. As you know, I contemplated stopping about a month ago, and I was talked out of stopping, so I'm going to continue for at least 6 months, and that is because of my patron support. And my patron crew is Joan and Juddy Judnick, Edwin Sauter, Val and Chris Alcorn, Denise and Eli Sackett, Joan and Jim Linbow, Sherry Erickson, Deb Shaw, and Matthew Spotton. Thank you guys so much for your support. It really does mean the world to me. If you are interested in becoming a member of our Patreon crew and helping to support the channel, there's a link in the description down below that'll take you to our Patreon page where there's a bunch of bonus content. I try and post a little something every day. There are extra videos, photos. It allows you to stay current with where we are, and you'd also help support us, and that would be awesome. If you do like our videos, please like, comment, and subscribe because that helps us out as well. Alrighty, I hope you all are well, and we'll see you next week.